You got to be out by 11:40.
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens teach, you better stand up. Stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge, let the meek weak flee. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Look who it is, the Legal Eagle. Professor Eric Segall joins us from Atlanta, where he is a professor of law, constitutional law, at the Georgia State University. Recently, he's been appointed to be the president of a new legal center there. We talked about it when he was here last. Very prestigious appointment, and it keeps him working and engaged and present. And of course, he's always going to join us for the rest of time. Happy to see you. Always happy to see you. One of my closest personal friends as well, Eric Segall, everybody. Hello.
I like that Pete. That music got me going. Little sleepy after a long weekend. Little sad about the Supreme Court. That got me going.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about why you're sad about the Supreme Court, and we're going to talk about, obviously, birthright citizenship, which is going to be argued on Wednesday. Before we get to the legal issues of the day, I want to ask you, you've always been a great parenting mentor to me, especially because you're a little older and also have daughters, one of which is older from a previous marriage, and your two younger daughters with Lynn, your current wife, obviously. And it's always been super helpful to talk about everything with you, from marriage to parenting. You've always been so good to me and generous.
Basketball.
No, I don't talk about basketball. I watch it, I play it. I don't talk about it. You talk about it, and you try to make other people talk about it, but they don't want to talk with you about it. But you do it just like that. Unbelievable. My question is, my topic is, tomorrow, that's why I'm doing 3 interviews today. I am banking them for, to put on the podcast, but people can watch them live today. So, because I'm going to Amsterdam, going to Europe tomorrow night, flying over the ocean. It's always a little scary, with Julia, 18, to visit Amsterdam in the Netherlands, because she's been accepted to, and plans as of right now, to attend the University of Amsterdam, unless she hears from a school in France, which she'll know this week. And then if that's the case, we call an audible. We also run to France, like 3 hours by train, visit there. But I'm taking Julia to Amsterdam. You're taking your daughter to a whole bunch of schools, right, as well. And you've done this before. When did this start, the school visit? And what should
I don't know. Certainly, I mean, I'm 68, 67. When I was growing up, all my friends went to college where I was living, and none of us even thought about the idea. I came to Emory University sight unseen, knew very little about it. Turned out to be a mistake as I got here, and it was all people from New York I was trying to escape from. But leaving that aside, it's really weird. The whole, I'm taking Kai on Friday, my 17-year-old junior, to Pomona, Claremont, UCLA, Santa Barbara in California. Meanwhile, Sarah, my 18-year-old, has been accepted at a bunch of universities, and she has to make a decision. She's going to probably take 3 trips in the next 4 weeks. And it's kind of weird, but not quite as weird to me as, I don't know if this is true in Europe, Pete. I hope you'll be spared this. But in America, it is apparently a new thing that dorm rooms, or I don't even know if this is frankly men and women, but certainly women dorm rooms have this thing where they have to be stylized and set up and designed and in a way that would have been ridiculed, I think, when Jesse went to college, which was 20
By
years ago.
who? They need to be styled by the student? You mean?
Yes, parents and kids spend
Oh,
tremendous.
yes. No, I saw that when Ava started
Yes.
school at Ithaca
Yes.
University, where she transferred out of. Yeah, that was a big thing, and they decorate. What's wrong with that?
Maybe nothing. Maybe I'm just a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I
I
do
don't know.
think it's funny that I do think it's probably likely more young women who do it than young men. Young men, college freshman men, typical guys, if you will. They don't do. I feel like they don't do a lot of decorating. Period.
We did nothing, and I will say that dorm rooms back in the day, I don't think this is true anymore. It was kind of a rite of passage because they were awful, they were small, they were cramped. When I came to Emory, this is no longer true. My dorm room was not air conditioned. We were on the quarter system. We took finals in June. It was 93 degrees and no air conditioning. Now I'm not
They
sure.
didn't have electricity then, though. It was prior to Ben Franklin's big experiment.
Well, that was the other problem. I don't know. The food halls when I went. So
It's your turn to put more coal in the oven, Segall.
when I live around the corner from Emory now. When I went to Emory, we had one cafeteria, which was inedible. We had one little hamburger place, which was mostly inedible. Today, when I walk around Emory's campus, I see eating options that I could not have conceived of.
College it's part of the competition to recruit students is absolutely to have all good food at the cafeteria and a whole bunch of snack places and other places, and they get known for that. These schools do, and so it matters. But my question is,
wait, Pete. Sorry, one last thing on that. My daughter Sarah, who's been accepted at I don't want to be too braggy about this. The places like Northwestern and Michigan and UCLA, she's telling me that UCLA clearly has the best food, Dad. I'm like, how do you know? Because they rank these things. I mean, the information available is insane.
Yeah. No, you can know the ski conditions an hour ago at your local mountain because somebody posted it. So you definitely can know a whole bunch of people are on Reddit and talking about who's got the best food at what campus and whatnot. But no, I guess my question is always, and for anybody listening who knows me personally and wants to reach out with advice, I want to be present. I'm very conscious of the empty nest is about to happen, and it is going to be empty. I'm moving back in my house. It's going to be me, and I look forward to having parties, including with you and
Excellent.
Your keys. But
my keys?
I'm having. I'm not.
Great movie, The Ice Storm. Everybody watch it.
So I want to be present during this trip. We're going to Europe. I don't know anything about Amsterdam. I was there once 26 years ago. And so, I'm always looking for advice as I go on away. I recently went away with Julia for the first time, just her and I. This is our second time doing it. And I'm super excited because I love hanging out with my daughter. Love it. My favorite person are my daughters to hang out with. I love spending any time with them. We always have a great time, but I don't know, just what am I going to do with her in Europe other than see the place? So, specifically in Amsterdam. So,
in Amsterdam, go to the Van Gogh Museum. It's one of the best museums in the world. And even someone who doesn't like art will like the Van Gogh Museum. It is unbelievable.
Yeah, I've been told to go to Van Gogh. And if you go to Anne Frank, plan to have the rest of the day off because it's so emotionally.
Anne Frank is rough. I've been there. That house is rough. Yeah.
All right. So if anybody has any advice on that, or for Eric or I, as we take our daughters,
are you going to let her smoke hash there, or whatever, or the kind of weed they have there, which is, as I understand it, substantially more powerful than what is available here?
Oh, I don't know if anything at this point. I'm not sure that it is because
maybe not.
It's pretty goddamn.
That was the thing to do back in the.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, I don't know if that's something that we'll do together. If my ex-wife is watching, I would say absolutely not. We would not do that.
I would never do that either with my children, for the record.
So she just said to me too, she's like, she didn't even realize when she got into the University of Amsterdam that there was a red light district in Amsterdam. She goes, what is the red light district? What is that? How come nobody told me? I was like, if you didn't know that, I mean, it's not for us to tell you.
Pete, one serious thing about college. Can we do that before we start on the Supreme Court? So it is insane to me that Oxford, Cambridge, University of Amsterdam, University of Paris, whoever, all these European schools, they are like, what, 1/10 the price of American school? I mean, it has gotten to the point here where unless you get accepted to Stanford or Harvard or one of the very, very top schools where they pay for you, whether you can afford it or not, for the other 99.8% of schools in America, private schools anyway, or out of state schools if you're non-resident, the cost is insane. It's prohibitive. It's insane. We're lucky. We have means, very fortunate, but it is something has to change about this. It's exceeded the rate of inflation by like 1,000% or something.
Well, I think something is going to change just for the simple fact of AI changing the economy and changing how we learn,
Right.
and the
Right.
fact that you can learn almost anything you want on YouTube. And so I think that our generation of parents has to take serious consideration with letting go of everything we learned about higher education. And that's hard for us to do because we think, go get an education, go to college, you have a much better shot at succeeding. And obviously that's still going to be true about certain career paths, but increasingly AI and technology is changing everything. So I'm excited that my older daughter is only doing 2 years because she wants to be a filmmaker and a storyteller. She's like, I don't need to waste money on college to do that. I'm already making money with her side hustles. She's doing great. And my younger daughter, one of the reasons why she wants to go to Europe is they are both EU citizens. So the point you made is, yeah, it's a lot cheaper in Europe, especially if you're a citizen, and both my daughters are, because my ex-wife, of course, is a first-generation American. She's an Italian citizen. So hence, EU, going to school there, way cheaper and arguably way better. And probably living there is probably going to be a lot better, too, as we lose more of our rights and freedoms in this country.
Yes, I think that's probably right. I agree.
Although it looks like China is going to be leading the future and everything. Everything I read lately is they make everything, and they're going to continue to make everything. Right. Meanwhile,
this was predicted, Pete. This was predicted 20 years ago.
Everybody's been saying it for a long time, and I'm not sure how accurate they are, what they're saying, but it does seem like as long as we're investing in the past in terms of energy and technology, and they're investing in the future, they're going to be the electrified country and making everything, and we're going to be, I don't know, who knows? So college, is it needed? That all depends.
Yeah. I mean, I think for a certain segment of the population, it's also a little bit of a rite of passage, a little bit of a time to grow up away from home. I know a lot of kids, my friends' kids now, for whom just the socialization of it is very important.
Such a big deal for me for that reason alone. I was absolutely became a socialized person. I met Jewish people, Hispanic people. And
when did you lose that?
Of black folks. That was mean. You thought, can you lose? Can you regress?
I have, for sure. See, it's this curve, Pete. You grow, and then somewhere around 60, it all comes apart. Around 65, you start descending into the hell of old age, and now who knows? I don't know what's happening.
All right, let's get to it. And I want to just start by reading a little bit about what we're going to talk about, which is birthright citizenship. It's being argued at the Supreme Court Wednesday. It's a huge case. You've got a lot to say about it, but what does the Constitution say from NPR.org? In the United States, birthright citizenship became part of the Constitution in 1868 as an effort to protect recently freed slaves. It was enacted with the passage of the 14th Amendment. Section 1 of the amendment says, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. But our new commander-in-chief, who's back, has taken aim at birthright citizenship, passing an executive order on day one of his second term to ban it. Should be mentioned that most countries don't have this right, and it should be mentioned other perspectives and historical references before we get to the case. What else matters about history, why we have this right, and how we got it?
Well, let's be clear about one thing. I think reasonable people can disagree about whether it is a good thing to say that anybody born on American soil, other than children of diplomats or invading armies, which we haven't had to deal with ever, but might in the future, are American citizens. I've looked at it a little bit, Pete. I'm not here to discuss the pros and cons of the policy. I think America has always been different than other countries until recently in terms of immigration. We've had our dark moments, like not allowing any Chinese people to be citizens from the late 19th century to the 20th century unless they were born here. But the policy is not what's important about this case, I don't think. I mean, it is if the Supreme Court does the wrong thing. What's important is there's been rarely a case, and this is why I wrote this morning on Dorf on Law, comparing this case to the broccoli argument from 2012, when the argument was if Congress can make you buy health insurance. They can make you buy broccoli, which was a completely stupid, absurd, ridiculous, insane argument. Dahlia Lithwick, your friend and mine, said that she would eat my book publicly if the Supreme Court accepted it. They did eventually accept it, but because Justice Roberts flipped at the last second and called the mandate a tax, Dahlia didn't have to read my book and eat my book, and the law was upheld. But the broccoli argument was insane and stupid and wrong. Healthcare and health reform and health insurance are trillion-dollar policies, trillion-dollar issues that affect the commerce of every state. Congress has the power to regulate commerce among the states, yet the Supreme Court bought it. And that's the problem here. If we just talk about text, what the 14th Amendment says, which is every person born here is a citizen if you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, they put that in for a very specific reason, to make sure that children of diplomats, invading armies, at the time, Native American tribes who had sovereignty themselves in a legalistic kind of way, wouldn't be included. But everybody else, including people who are here illegally, including people who are here temporarily, they are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The Supreme Court held that in Wong Kim Ark, a late 19th century case that 99.5% of legal scholars have always said is correct. In any event, it's the law. But this is one of those rare cases, Pete, in constitutional law, where unlike color blindness for affirmative action, unlike abortion, unlike, is money speech, all of those issues where there are meaningful disagreements among people acting in good faith as a constitutional law. This is not that. The arguments are overwhelmingly easy that as a judge, the Supreme Court has no choice but to say that Trump's executive order, which, by the way, is also inconsistent with a federal statute. So we have both a federal statute implementing the 14th Amendment and the 14th Amendment. Trump can't change either one. And frankly, Congress can't change the Constitution. Trump can't change either the federal law or the Constitution. This is a really easy case. And yet, people are very worried, like in the Trump immunity case, that almost no one saw coming, that kind of alerted us, that the court, as a political matter and an ideological matter, might want to side with the Trump administration. Let's not mince words, and then I'll stop this rant. Let's not mince words by what this is about. This is about racism.
Yeah.
First and last. That's what it's about. This is part of Steve Miller's overall effort to make America not great again, but white supremacy again. And we're getting close to that. And that's why this case is so important symbolically. And I'll have to say, again, I'm nervous about saying this. I don't think the court is going to upset 100 years of almost unanimous agreement about this, because a few law professors in 2025 and 26 have ambitions and want to make a name for themselves. So, lawyers can make any argument. So they're making these, what I think are almost frivolous, if not frivolous arguments. But the court has accepted frivolous arguments before, struck down the Voting Rights Act based on frivolous argument, ruled the mandate couldn't be justified as a Commerce Clause law based on politics, said the president has almost complete immunity from criminal prosecution, a horrific decision not based on law. And of course, everything involving money is speech. Citizens United, even before Citizens United, the landmark case of Buckley versus Vallejo, which said expenditures could not be limited. All of that is anti-law. So what the court will do here, I don't know. I'd like to think that Roberts and at least one other conservative, because it takes two now, won't want to be on the court remembered for this seismic racist shift. But I don't know.
I just have a question, not about the legality of it, and I know that you're not the policy expert on this, but what is the main concern? I feel like the bar is so low in terms of rights that the court is taking, and Congress arguably as well, obviously the president. And so,
sorry, Pete, you're coming in and out. I know we're live.
I'm coming in and out.
Can you ask that again? Yeah.
What do we lose if we lose birthright citizenship? What do we lose? I just asked it.
What do we lose if we lose birthright citizenship?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's not for us to decide. It's like saying, what do we lose if we lose freedom of speech? The Constitution provides for it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this executive order by Donald Trump is retroactive. It's not retroactive. It applies 30 days after it was issued, but it was, of course, every judge who's looked at it has stated or enjoined it or said it's not constitutional. But if the Supreme Court would reverse all those judges and say that the Trump administration position is correct, here's the biggest fear, and it is huge. He could change the executive order so that it's retroactive as well as prospective. And what that would mean is all the millions, tens of millions, 50s millions of people who were born here to either undocumented immigrants or visiting tourists, they could lose their citizenship, Pete. And that would be a massive, massive debacle in terms of legality, in terms of politics. But almost every scholar has said this. The arguments that the Trump administration are making in favor of this executive order, which are frivolous, would apply just as equally if he wanted to make it retroactive. And that is a very scary proposition.
Exactly. If they could do that, that would be different. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Now I can hear you. Yes. Sorry.
So what else do you want to say about that? And we haven't talked in a couple of weeks about some of the cases that have been argued or anything else coming up.
So this may be a little bit in the weeds. I'm sorry. This may be a little bit in the weeds on this, but I do want to talk about it. So last week, an interesting thing happened among the hoity-toity law professors, I'm not one of them, of the world. A law professor at Yale named Samuel Moyne, along with a other grad student he's working with, wrote a long blog post on one of the most elite legal blogs saying that the liberal law professors, including my colleague, Anthony Christ, who many in your audience may follow on Twitter or Blue Sky, they have been just aghast at the poor and terrible and bad faith legal maneuverings of a few conservative law professors, like I'm going to name them, like Randy Barnett, who we've talked about before, like a guy named Alon Werman at the University of Minnesota, and they've been trying to fight with them in editorial pages and other places and law review articles. And this guy at Yale wrote this article saying we shouldn't do that. When liberal law professors engage with these frivolous arguments that are clearly appealing to the worst impulses of the conservative justices, by addressing the arguments on the merits in terms of text, history, and all that precedent, it gives the really weak arguments air that they shouldn't have, to which a few of those law professors that were called out responded and said, but we can't leave them unanswered because that'll make it sound, if we do that, the court might adopt them anyway, and then no one's here to rebut them. To which the Yale law professor would reply, but the whole thing has to come down because the Supreme Court is an obviously awful institution, no matter who's on it, the Segall view. And so I wrote a blog post this morning on Dorf on Law trying to navigate those two, and they're really at issue right now, personally, those two warring sides. And my answer to that, and it's a hard one, we know the Supreme Court in constitutional law cases like these, the justices do not and will not be swayed by the best legal arguments. Period, full stop. They have life tenure. They have unreviewable power. They will do what they want. But they want to hear the arguments, at least as a matter of style, that flow from text, history, and precedent, not the ideological, political arguments. My response is you have to do both. And liberals should do both. It's not an either or, it's an and. And if I were briefing this case in the Supreme Court, either as a party or as an amicus brief, of which there are hundreds, I would really call the justices out on, do you really want to change, not forget the law. This has been a settled understanding for for a long time, and upsetting it will, A, be looked at by history wrong. You're on the wrong side of history on this. And two, it will upset so many things. And Peter, one last thing before I finish this rant. I'm going back now to Bush versus Gore, because I had a view of Bush versus Gore that at the time, a lot of people thought was controversial. I think it applies to these kinds of cases. By the time the case was going to be argued in the Supreme Court, Al Gore had an army of lawyers, one of whom was Lawrence Tribe, who in 2000 was the most famous constitutional law professor in the country, not close, Harvard Law School, eventually hired by Obama to do special things. But he was the most famous. Today there's maybe 10. He was number one. But he was not an expert in Florida election law. So the question became, I mean, he knew about it, of course, and could learn it, but he wasn't a long-time expert in it. So the question became, who should argue this case in the Supreme Court of the United States? And the Al Gore people decided not Lawrence Tribe, but someone who is an expert in Florida election law. And that was a huge mistake, because the only way there was any chance of the Supreme Court not ruling for Bush, which, by the way, without that happening, the whole world would be different. Iraq war wouldn't have happened. Who knows? But anyway, there was only one chance, and that was for Lawrence Tribe to stand up and mostly forget the law and look Justice Kennedy, who was maybe a swing vote, and maybe O'Connor, who was maybe a swing vote, right in the eye and say, if you do this, you will live in infamy. The Supreme Court should not be deciding this election dispute. It is bad as a matter of policy. It has to be wrong as a matter of law. It will forever stain the Supreme Court of the United States, and for good reasons. That kind of direct argument the justices hate, but they will be affected by occasionally. Anyway, it was a long shot, but it was the only chance. In this case, I think the chances of the right, correct side winning are much greater because the politics are different. But the most persuasive arguments on Wednesday will not be based on text, history, and precedent, all of which are against the Trump administration. The most effective arguments will be, do you want to be part of an opinion upsetting this century-long expectation and potentially wreaking havoc on how this country does immigration? And that may or may not work, but it needs to be included. Will it be included? I don't know. But what I do know is Lawrence Tribe had the only chance of winning Bush versus Gore, and they didn't give him the chance, and it was a mistake. I hope that the lawyers for the plaintiffs here at least bring up what I would call political arguments separate from text, precedent, and history, because Pete, those things will not drive the decision. They never do in these kinds of big con law cases, which is sad but true. End of rant.
That was a great one. Really important. The whole plan.
And you're still coming in and out for some reason.
I don't think I'm coming in and out for people watching. Why is there an audio issue for you?
Pete, are you there?
Oh, how annoying is that?
Sorry, audience. I know this is live and I know it's hard, but it's not my fault.
You can't hear anything I'm saying, Segall?
I'm hearing dings, Pete. And you're frozen.
Oh, man.
This isn't great.
Can you hear me now?
Who wants Pete and to party hard in Amsterdam? Me.
Everybody else hears us both. Everybody else hears us both.
Well, this is tough. Pete, I cannot hear you at all.
I'm going
to get out and come back in and see what happens.
That's a good idea. Turn it on and turn it back off. Both are good for viewers. No audio issue on that end. It's definitely him. I can hear him. He just can't hear me. And you can all hear us. So hopefully he'll come back. Maybe he'll be smart enough to come back on his computer and not his phone, which is where we were. I was asking him to use his phone because he was better audio and video. Sorry about that. Let's see if Segall comes back, because I still really do want to ask him about a couple of previous arguments and what else is coming up. Also, if you're watching now, I'm going to wrap up with Eric in a few minutes, and then I'll be joined by Professor Jeff Jarvis around 11:45 or noon. Let's see. He's back.
I'm back.
How's this?
This is much better. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. The phone thing didn't work.
You don't sound as good, but I'll allow for it, because I want to ask you about two other questions. What did we miss, since we haven't talked in a couple of weeks, in terms of arguments that have been made, the court has heard in the past couple of weeks, and what else is coming up?
Well, there was an argument a couple of weeks ago on mail-in ballots. I think we may have discussed this on last time I was on, but it was an impossibly frustrating argument. Congress has allowed mail-in ballots forever. This is not forever, but for a very long time. The states get to decide what election rules they have unless Congress overrides them. Congress has not overridden the use of mail-in ballots. A friend of mine, James Sample, who's a professor at Hofstra, not far from where you're sitting, And I recommend everybody follow James Sample on Facebook, on Twitter, on Blue Sky. He's great. He's an election law expert, used to work for the Brennan Center. It almost drove him to distraction because it was so embarrassing, the questions the justices asked. They had these wild hypotheticals that no state has. Alito and Thomas asked these wild hypotheticals that no one's ever done, no one's afraid of, to try to show that the logic of late ballots could lead to terrible things. And it was just embarrassing. I don't know how the odds are the court is going to say, look, mail-in ballots counted, received on election day or before, but counted afterwards can't be counted. And that would be judicial aggression, judicial annihilation of a kind we haven't seen in a long time. So that's really scary. We're also waiting for some huge cases on voting rights. The court is going to hold that redistricting to create majority minority districts, meaning safe districts for some people of color, which, the court's going to hold that's unconstitutional, and that's going to make it even more difficult for Black people to be elected to Congress. It's already incredibly hard in most jurisdictions, like Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina. So there's a lot coming down to June. The June is going to be wild. And I do think that one of the reasons the court ruled on tariffs the way they did and early is so, the left, liberals, the pundits, well, we gave you tariffs. Now we can take away everything else. That's likely what's going to happen.
I appreciate that explanation. We will be paying close attention to all of it, and you will be holding our hand through all of it. And we're very grateful for your expertise, your scholarship, your generosity, your kindness, your humor, your humanity, and your hair.
But definitely not my technology. I'm sorry about what happened. I don't know.
I asked you to get on the phone because I thought it did sound better. I just had to come down there once and for all and set you up. Now, you're also broadcasting from a dungeon room, I think.
Yeah. So just so your audience knows,
you renovated your whole house. You have a guest house, but you still don't have like a studio, like a place where your audio will sound good and you'll look like. I just got to come visit and say.
Well, no, this is going to change because, as you mentioned earlier, as director of a new Center on Constitutional Law at Georgia State, there's going to be major upgrades in my home situation so that we can do this in a real way. I apologize to everybody.
You need a dedicated situation so you don't have to touch anything. You just press on your computer, your light, your mic, your camera, all come on. It sounds good in the room. You're wearing a cardigan, probably.
Never. Linwood, I would no longer be married. It would be sad. I want to wear corduroy jackets and, I can't wear those. I'm not allowed.
In your new job, but why can't you reinvent your style with this amazing new?
Yeah. Can we have Lynn on next time and we can crowdsource that? I think that's a very good idea. If anyone out there thinks I make my own decisions about those kinds of stylistic things, you've not been listening to me for the last 12 years on this show.
We should also start a segment called Judge Eric, because you were never a judge, and we should just have you judge petty arguments and
I would love that. My second favorite podcast in the world next to yours, and there's a big difference between yours and theirs in terms of my love, is the Dan Le Batard show. I'm going to throw it out there because they do that all the time. They have a guy who's not a judge, but they ask him to judge things. It's a funny segment. I'm happy to do it as long as we're allowed to talk sports during that segment.
Forget it. All right. Well, let's try. Thank you, Eric Segall. Go follow him everywhere on Blue Sky. What else are we plugging?
I have a Dorfman Law piece today that I think is interesting.
I'll read that piece. Very interesting.
And in about a month, I have a law review article coming out, which was written not for law review audiences, but for lawyers and non-lawyers, that makes the case, ironically but accurately, that the Roberts Court is actually the most anti-originalist court in American history.
Oh, interesting.
And it's just the only court ever with a majority of justices who self-identify as originalists. The hypocrisy is stunning. And I'm proud of that piece. It's
looking forward to that and sharing it with everybody. Thank you for joining me, my friend. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching live, everybody. And I'll be back around 11:45 or noon with Professor Jeff Jarvis, who we all know and love. Bye-bye. See you in a few minutes right here, wherever you're watching.